All right, I think we're live. Please push 1 in the chat if you can hear me. All right, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is open chat number 99. Please hit the like button as you come in, share the video if possible, and hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust. There's a docket in the description beneath the chat and beneath the video for you to follow along with and reference. If you want to engage in the discussion, there'll be a Zoom link in the chat for you to click on. Let me grab the first item on the docket so we can get started. Let me know you can see my screen.
Now,
Yeah. Okay, got a confirmation. Thank you for the confirmation. Let's get started with this. This happened earlier today. Bernie Sanders stops a fight between Senator Mullen and the Teamsters boss, Sean O'Brien.
now let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior. As everybody knows, and it's here in the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish he was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company myself, and my wife was running the office, because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be 2 consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold it. No, no, sit down.
Oh, you're a clown.
Sit down.
Look at you.
You know, you're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
please.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it, hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can't, no,
This is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough of contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and bullies.
You have,
And that's
you
what-
have
I don't like
the mic.
you, because you
Hold
just
it.
described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
Then let's do this, because I did challenge you and I accepted your challenge, and you went quiet.
No, I didn't go quiet. I was.
Hold on.
No, no,
You
hold-
challenged me to a cage match,
No, no,
acting
no,
like a
sir.
12-year-old schoolyard
Hold
bully.
it. Excuse
Sir,
me,
hold on.
hold it. No, excuse me, I have the
I
mic.
will say exactly.
Senator
what you
Mullen,
said.
I have the mic. You have questions on any economic issues, anything that said, go for it. We're not here to talk about physical abuse.
You brought.
We're not
him
talking
in.
about, of course I did.
And let me show you his hearing, because I want to expose this thug to who he is. And
Could you not point at me? That's disrespectful.
I don't care about respecting you at all. I
don't
respect people
respect
that I
you at all.
respect. So
All right, hold it.
let me.
Hold it. No,
You're one of
hold it.
the most
Hold
elite
it,
people.
please.
Act it.
Please. All right? This is a, excuse me. This is a hearing to discuss economic issues. All right? If you have questions for Mr. O'Brien or anybody else on what he has said, go for it. But we're not here to talk about fights or anything else.
I'm quoting exactly what he said.
You can
and
say
this
what
is-
you want,
This is
but-
your witness
This
you
is
brought.
my
And let me,
witness.
I'm exposing him.
You can
as a
talk
person
anything you
who he
want,
is. So in
but no fight-
2013. Now, let's talk about Mr. O'Brien himself, his behavior.
Now, I see MOT is gone. Here's the deal. This is what goes down when, when you run out of intelligence, okay? When you can't govern, you can't really cultivate public policy that's in the best interest of the people. This is what goes down. And a lot of Black men want to be on that side because they identify with this. Okay? This is what they think governing is about. Wanting to shoot the fair one, wanting to fight somebody, wanting to get in the mud with people. That's why the Republican Party or the right, the MAGA right, the conservative movement is taking off with a lot of brothers. They see things like this and they gravitate towards it. Because to them, there is no point in governing. Why govern? Okay? Why govern when you can just beat people's asses on Capitol Hill and not have to really answer to anything? Now, what he's hoping to gain out of this, I don't know. I think that it would probably damage his credibility going forward, because if I'm the Teamster guy, I just press charges against him and get him clinked up and put him in the clink. But that's just me. But I would like to see him try that with a brother on the left, somebody like me. See, you come at me like that with the, anytime, any place. Bro, ain't nothing in between us but air and opportunity. All that declaration don't mean nothing. See, they know who to run that game on and who not to run that game on. They know they're not going to be able to run that game on somebody like Jamal Bowman or somebody like Hakeem Jeffries or, like a brother like Warnock. I know Warnock's a little bit older, but the point of the matter here is you put a strong brother in the room, and I'm telling you right now, that ain't going down. Okay? That ain't going down. MOT, what's your take on this?
Man, my take on this is like, they've been doing this shit for a while, but they pick their targets. They pick their targets because they're cowards, naturally. But at the end of the day, they're going to end up picking one of these dudes who do MMA and they're going to get pretzeled up, man. It's all of a sudden, the stars are going to align and something going to happen. But at the end of the day, man, it's just cowardice. And it's not that it's cowardice. They get away with it. It's national. It's on TV. And people get charges pressed on them for a lot less than this. Right? But it's just that they have like the protection. Like this cowardly protection is something that just makes my stomach turn.
Yeah, indeed, man. I just think that he's indicative of the modern day conservative movement. No public policy to govern on. Can't have an intellectual discussion. Everything's about violence for them. Everything.
Until there's a counter argument that's actually about violence. Like they think they're the only ones who got guns and all this kind of other stuff. Like, okay, they feel dangerous because they got weapons, not understanding that other people's got weapons. Just because they're not displaying them like dummies doesn't mean like they don't know how to use them. Like, I don't think that they want the fight that they claim that they want, man. I don't think they want that for real.
Yeah, because you're right. Like you said, they pick and choose their targets and they know who to go after and who not to go after. They go after that Teamsters boss. I think that's a bad move. Mostly because the Teamsters boss is likely to organize better on the ground because
oh yeah, far better.
The union sees this guy Yeah, the union sees this brother as, or I shouldn't say this brother, but the union sees the Teamster boss as a stand-up guy now. So that galvanizes the base for them. And so if the Teamsters decide to shut down, whether it's United Auto Workers or UPS, FedEx, whatever the union is that he's representing, they may very well be able to, apply more pressure to a system that largely he benefits from, as a plumber. As I don't know what kind of plumbing business he's running. I don't know if he's a master plumber, journeyman. I don't know what it is, but they may cut off his supply chain. May decide to make this guy,
And they can easily do that.
squeal
Like,
for a
that's
bit.
how come you don't.
But
That's how come you don't put targets on
Mhm.
yourself like that.
let me play this again, just for one more time. We need to kind of get another angle at this.
As everybody knows, and it's here in the last time, him and I kind of had a back and forth. Appreciate your demeanor today. It's quite different. But after you left here, you got pretty excited about the keyboard. In fact, you tweeted at me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. And let me read what the last one said. It said, greedy CEO who pretends like he's self-made. Sir, I wish you was in the truck with me when I was building my plumbing company. Myself and my wife was running the office because I sure remember working pretty hard and long hours. Pretends like he's self-made. What a clown. Fraud. Always has been, always will be. Quit the tough guy act in these Senate hearings. You know where to find me. Any place, anytime, cowboy. Sir, this is a time, this is a place. If you want to run your mouth, we can be two consenting adults. We can finish it here.
Okay, that's fine. Perfect.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
No,
guy.
no, stop it.
Is that your solution every
Hold it. No, sit down. Sit down.
Okay.
You're a United States Senator. Sit down.
Active.
please.
Oh, okay.
Sit down, please.
All right.
Can I respond? Mr.
Hold
Chairman?
it, hold it. If
Hold
we
on.
can,
This
no,
is
I have
what
the
he
mic.
said.
I'm sorry.
This is
Hold
what
it.
he said.
You'll have your time.
Okay.
Can I respond?
Oh, no, you can't. This is a hearing. And God knows the American people have enough of contempt for Congress. Let's not
I don't
make
like
it worse.
thugs and
You-
bullies.
You have,
And that's
you
what-
have
And I don't
the
like
mic.
you, because you
Hold
just
it.
described yourself.
Hold it. You have the mic.
Yeah.
You have time.
All right.
Make your statement.
Then let's do this, because I did challenge you and I accepted your challenge, and you went quiet.
No, I didn't go quiet. I was,
Hold on.
No, no,
you
hold-
challenged me to a cage match,
No, no,
acting
no,
like a
sir.
12-year-old schoolyard
Hold
bully.
it. Excuse
Sir,
me,
hold on.
hold it. No, excuse me, I have the
I
mic.
will say exactly.
Senator
what you
Mullen,
said.
I have the mic. You have questions on any economic issues, anything that said, go for it. We're not here to talk about physical abuse.
You brought.
We're not
him
talking
in.
about, of course I
And,
did.
and let me
He's-
let me show you his hearing, because I want to expose this thug to who he is. In
Could you not point at me?
2013
That's disrespectful.
All right.
I don't care about respecting you at all. I
I don't
respect people that
respect you at all.
respect. So
All right, hold
let
it.
me
Hold it. No,
You're one of
hold
the most
Hold
elite
it,
people.
please.
Act it.
Please. All right? This is excuse me. This is a hearing to discuss economic issues. All right? If you have questions for Mr. O'Brien or anybody else on what he has said, go for it.
I mean-
But we're not here to talk about fights or anything else.
I'm quoting exactly what he said.
You can
and
say
this
what
is-
you want,
This is
but-
your witness
This
you
is
brought,
my
and let me.
witness.
I'm exposing him.
You can
as a
talk
person
anything
who
you want.
he is. So
but
in
no fight-
2013.
Now, here's the deal, because I looked at it from a different angle. Bernie Sanders is a self-proclaimed leftist, okay? He's left of the party itself. He's also a union guy, if I remember correctly, or at least he's pro-union. You got a Teamster on as a witness that he brought in. That adds to his credibility. You have a Republican senator who wants to fight because he can't discuss economic policies for the American people. This is the reality that we live in. Okay. You have a lot of brothers in this space who would love to be on that side with Senator Mullen. Might want to rock a mullet too. And so I see more of this coming in 2024. This is just a precursor. Okay. This is just a precursor. You have anything else you want to add to this, MLT?
Sounds like a manosphere panel to me, man. You know, one person trying to moderate, two people still keep going at it. I mean, man, that's what it sounds like to me. I mean, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like I said, that's this cowardly thing about it. Not, if that guy would have ran across the room at him, oh, you know, it would have been like, oh man, I'm such a victim. But
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying. And yeah, it's going to have to get that way. It's going to have to get that way where you're running your mouth and you turn your back and all of a sudden that dude is right up on top of you, giving you them hands. And then like all of a sudden, oh, that guy has no self-control. Like, all right, man, you keep thinking people are weak, man. Like people are not weak. Like people are showing or even exercising a lot of restraint dealing with these dudes, man. Like they don't understand like how much that they're like holding up like military promotions or stopping people from getting health care. Like, bro, people are mad at that shit. For real. Like, man, like y'all really gotta bro, y'all really gotta understand, man. Like y'all really affecting people's lives with this nonsense. And it's gonna come down to like pre-Civil War where you know somebody just got that cane. It's coming. I mean, but they making it to kind of be here, man. Unfortunately, man. But
you know, it's interesting you bring up the cane. And no, I'm sorry. You bring up the cane in pre-Civil War. If I remember correctly, it was Charles Sumner, the senator, Massachusetts, who was a white abolitionist who got hit over the head with a cane by one of the Democrats, if I remember correctly.
yeah.
I forget
from
his
the
name
South.
now. His name slips my
Never
mind.
should have happened.
Yeah, but yeah, his blood is still on the Senate floor, from my understanding. It's still there.
Yeah, it is. It is.
And so I find this to be, it's still there. They never wiped it up. They left it there as a reminder of what happens in politics when you have culture warriors who can't govern. All they can do is use violence. And so I think that's relevant to the future of this country. But I want to jump to the next item on the docket. This is from AB Media. Let's play this clip and let's get to the root of what he's trying to say.
Oh, okay. This ought to be good.
Well, do you think that the party that founded the KKK was racist?
Of course I do.
Do you think that the party that was pro-segregation was racist?
Of course I do.
Do you think that the party that was pro putting my great-great-grandmother in the back of the bus was racist?
Of course I do.
That party was the Democrat Party.
Interesting. I would love for you to send me some information on that. And if I read it and I agree with it.
Yep. It was the Democrat Party. Like it or not.
Well, do you think that the party that founded the KKK...
All right, that's enough of that.
Of course I do.
Yeah, and where were they at? Where were they located? Where did the Montgomery bus boycott happen at? Who runs that state right now? State legislature, state house, state senate. What are both of their senators right now? So you mean tell me that the Democrats just went all the way to the north, or is it just the people of the party at the time? Those are people who occupy different things, and this is the main reason why you can't have these discussions, is because they get caught up on names and not who actually was part of the party. And then once you have to carry both sides of the conversation, and then they just walk away from it. Like me, I don't run into people this stupid, like on a daily basis, who don't know that the party's split. Who doesn't understand that the Republican Party of back then isn't the Republican Party now, and neither is the Democratic Party. It's just that you have to be up on the history, and no one's going to keep trying to correct you or even pulling you toward modernity.
Yeah.
Like, this is something that the school system should have cleaned up, pretty much.
Yeah, let me go over this piece from Princeton. This is from economicsprinceton.edu. Okay. Why did the Democrats lose the South? Bringing new data to an old debate. In 1960, all 22 U.S. senators from the South were affiliated with the Democratic Party. Today, all but 3 are Republican. For decades, historians and other researchers have debated what drove the exodus of white Southerner voters from the Democratic Party. Were they turned away primarily by economic self-interest, or did they abandon the party because they came to the view it as too progressive on issues of racial equality? One reason researchers have failed to find consensus on this question, or the central question of American political economy, is that data limitations have hampered their efforts. To study views on civil rights, specifically, researchers need quality data, quality public polling data. Until recently, consistently worded survey questions on racial attitudes from both before and after the major civil rights victories of the 1960s were not widely available. Fortunately, that's no longer the case, thanks to Roper Center at Cornell University, which has made available a wealth of Gallup polling data that predates the civil rights movement. In a recent paper, Why Did the Democrats Lose the South?, bringing new data to an old debate, Princeton's Ilana Kuzmenko and Yale's Abiana Washington uses data to argue that nearly all of the Democratic Party's losses in the South from 1958 to 1980 can be explained by white voters' racially conservative views. The authors find almost no role in income growth among white voters or non-race related policy preferences in explaining why white Southerner voters left the party. Their findings help explain why some of the poorest parts of the country now serve as the base of the political party that is least supportive of redistribution. According to their research, this irony of the modern American political system can be directly linked to the racially conservative ideologies of Southern voters in the 1960s.
Southern strategy.
Below are the main findings and the main findings and key points from the study. The turning point for white Southerner Democrats can be narrowed down to the spring of 1963, before the authors are able to test whether racially conservative views motivated the defection of white Southern Democrats over other factors. They must first identify. This is poorly written. I don't know why. First, identify when voters were most likely to see the Democratic Party as. Yeah, let me just finish this. Voters were most likely to see the Democratic Party as the party most closely aligned with the support for civil rights. Conventional wisdom holds that Democratic Party President Johnson famously lost the South with his signing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. However, the authors marked this shift as occurring in the spring of 1963 when Democratic President John F. Kennedy first proposed legislation barring discrimination in public accommodations. It was then that civil rights as a political issue not only became salient to the majority of Americans, but also clearly associated with the Democratic Party. The authors arrive at this conclusion by analyzing several data sources. First, they look at responses to the American National Election Survey, ANS, question that asks, quote, which party is more likely to stay out of the question of whether white or colored children go to the same schools? In 1960, only 13% of white Southerner voters saw the Democrats as the party pushing for school integration. By 1964, 45% of white Southerner voters saw the Democrats as more aggressively promoting school integration. This shift in how voters perceived the party matches what was happening in Congress. Even though the majority of the congressional opposition to the 1964 Civil Rights Act came from Democrats. Within each state, Democrat legislators were significantly more likely to support the 1964 Civil Rights Amendment than were their Republican counterparts. Finally, the authors zero in on the shift even more by analyzing high-frequency media coverage as it relates to the President Kennedy, the leader of the Democratic Party, and civil rights issues. They use textual analysis to observe that June of 1963 is when articles including civil rights, quote unquote, and quote unquote President Kennedy skyrocketed in the New York Times, the Dallas Morning News, and the New Orleans Times Picayune. Further, Gallup polling data shows that 1963 marks the beginning of a large, though temporary, swell in the share of Americans calling civil rights the country's most important issue. White voters in the South left the Democratic Party at much higher rates than other white voters because of their racially conservative views. To perform their analysis, the authors construct a triple difference model using a Gallup survey question, employed consistently and frequently from 1958 to 1972 onward, that asks respondents whether respondents would vote for a qualified man, quote unquote person, in more recent years also happen to be Negro Black. They define those who do not answer yes to this question as racially conservative. Their model makes it possible for them to isolate what factor made white voters in the South so much more likely than other white voters to lead the Democratic Party post-1963. The analysis reveals that from 1958 to 1980, white Southerner voters left the Democratic Party at a rate that was 17 percentage points higher than similar white voters elsewhere in the country. This decline is almost entirely explained by the 19 percentage point decline among racially conservative white Southerner voters. Further, they find that before 1963, conservative racial views strongly predict Democratic Party identification in the South. After 1963, that association is all but wiped out. Importantly, their results hold when we control for many socioeconomic status measures included in the Gallup poll in the Gallup data. They are also highly evident in event time graphical analysis as well. Almost none of the political shift can be explained by income growth among white Southerners or voters' positions on other policy issues. While white Southerners did enjoy faster income growth than white people elsewhere during their sample period, they find no evidence that it can explain much, if any, of their defection from the Democratic Party. During this period, and more generally in U.S. history, higher household income predicts lower support for the Democratic Party. But even if they take the most generous estimate of how Democratic identification declines with household income, voters who left the party would have to experience a 600% increase in household income over a 2-year period to account for the degree to which they left the party. Further, while this income growth led to substantial disruption and dislocation as white people and others in the region rapidly transitioned from agriculture to services and manufacturing, these trends have little to no power in explaining the political shift. In short, economic development, even broadly and flexibly defined, cannot explain why Southerner voters left the Democratic Party after 1963. Finally, by using ANIS polling data to examine voters' views on more than a dozen policy questions, the authors find no evidence that white Democratic voters in the South were more conservative on non-racial policy issues before 1963. If anything, they were slightly to the left on most issues. Let me read that again.
Yep. Say it
Okay?
again.
Let me read that again. If anything, they were slightly to the left on most issues. There's no evidence that absent Democrats' introduction of civil rights legislation in 1963, white Southerners were on the verge of abandoning the Democratic Party because of policy disagreements. Importantly, the study's results do not imply that every white Southerner voter who left the Democratic Party embraced the Republican Party. In fact, the authors demonstrate that the Southern increase in Republican identification, while still significant, is slightly less than half the decrease in Democratic Party adherence over a sample period of 1958 to 1980. The study's result suggests that a large voting bloc left more redistributive political party over largely non-economic issues, reducing political support for redistributive policies just when theory would predict that they should become more popular. As a result, the poorest parts of the country now serve as the base of the Republican Party, the party that is least supportive of redistribution. Though this outcome may seem counterintuitive to many observers of American politics, it should serve as a sobering reminder of just how powerful a political force racial ideologies can be. Before 1963, white voters in the South were, if anything, slightly to the left of white voters elsewhere on domestic policy issues. Let me read this again. Before 1963, white voters in the South were, if anything, slightly to the left of white voters elsewhere on domestic policy issues. Further, while the 1960s also saw political organization of women in other minority groups, the authors find no evidence that white Southerners who have negative views of women, Catholics, or Jews were more likely to leave the Democratic Party in 1963. The exodus was specific to those who were racially conservative. The fact that having racially conservative views would lead so many to abandon a political party that otherwise represented their views is a critical lesson from history. Let me read this again. The fact that having racially conservative views would lead so many to abandon a political party that otherwise represented their views is a critical lesson from history. Quote, the South is defined in this study as 11 states that made up the U.S. Confederacy: Arkansas, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. Interesting, they don't put Maryland in there. We hope our paper might increase awareness of these data for researchers interested in details about the survey quality of the data and how to access it. Please see the appendix. So let me read this last piece here. We complement this main result with a variety of corroborating evidence. Using a wealth of Gallup polling data, we correlate the data on presidential approval for President Kennedy in the South and the non-South, with news coverage related to civil rights and other major issues at the time, even when we flexibly control for media coverage of the events and issues, allowing Southerners to have different reactions to news regarding Cuba, the Soviet Union, Social Security, etc. The number of articles linking Kennedy to the civil rights retains its overwhelming explanatory power in predicting his reduced popularity among white Southern voters versus other white voters. So there you have it. Now, this is what we're responding to for those who don't understand why I'm reading this, okay?
Well, do you think that the party that founded the KKK was racist?
Of course I do.
Do you think that the party that was pro-segregation was racist?
Of course I do.
Do you think that the party that was pro putting my great-great-grandmother in the back of the bus was racist?
Of course I do.
That party was the Democrat Party.
Interesting. I would love for you to send me some information on that. And if I read it and I
Yep. It was the Democrat Party. Like it or not.
Well, do you think that the party that founded the KKK was racist?
of course I did.
So it's important that you understand that when you see clips like we just watched a few seconds ago, that this sort of misinformation campaign is persistent in the Black manosphere today. Now, we just watched a white Republican conservative ready to fist fight. If you don't think that this article that highlights the racially conservative views that many people in the Republican Party have today don't reflect that what happened 50, 60 years ago, then what are we talking about here? This is my source. It's in the docket, in the description of the video. And if anybody want to speak up for AB Media, there's a link in the chat. You're more than welcome to come up here and defend it. This is from Princeton. Okay, it's a major D1 school. I mean, you can question some of the grammatical errors here, but for all intents and purposes, they're standing on this evidence. They've provided all the evidence. I'm using this as evidence. Go ahead, MOT.
I mean, it is what's most commonly done within conservative circles, but like this manosphere kind of, you know, red pill grifter type thing, you end up thinking that you're a conservative because of a deliberate mistelling of history. A deliberate mistelling of history. And they're not even intellectually curious enough to even know that they're being lied to. And they don't care. So you just have to not care with it. You just have to be happy with the fact that they do live in conservative states, even though they live in liberal areas. Like most of these so-called quote-unquote conservatives, they never live around conservative areas in conservative states or conservative areas in liberal states. They're always living in blue areas in red states or blue areas in blue states. I find that shocking and amazing that you are conservative, but you don't want to live around your actual ideology. I find that to be weird.
Yeah, I mean, the article is pretty spot on. I mean, how many times have we, and this was written in 2016. And they must have been doing research, you know, probably 2-3 years before that, to really get to the meat and potatoes of what's really going on here, or what was going on back then. And so, like the article, like the research paper professes to, that white Southerners were to the left of other white people in, you know, on domestic issues. It was only when Black people were starting to get their rights where they were like, oh, whoa, wait a second here. I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
And so Medicaid, Social Security was fine as long as they had it. But the moment they tried to expand it to everybody else, that's when they wanted to be a little bit more exclusive and nativist. And it's like these people are even your own countrymen, and you're saying dumb things like this. But that's just where we're at. The cultural issue.
Yeah. The fact that having racially conservative views would lead so many to abandon a political party that otherwise represented their views is a critical lesson from history. If you think that's not happening right now, and that was happening. Say it again.
So the South could benefit heavily from unions, benefit heavily from government projects and all this kind of stuff. Heavily could benefit from.
Yeah. Though this outcome may seem counterintuitive to many observers of American politics, it should serve as a sobering reminder of just how powerful a political force racial ideologies can be. Before 1963, white voters in the South were, if anything, slightly to the left of white voters elsewhere on domestic policy issues. Further, while the 1960s also saw the political organization of women in other minority groups, the authors find no evidence that white Southerners who have negative views of women, Catholics, or Jews were likely to leave the Democratic Party in 1963. The exodus was specific to those who were racially conservative. This, this is interesting, right? Because MOT, you're really one of the louder voices on conservatism in this space in terms of how it's used and how it's leveraged. And this is why I don't like when Black people talk about conservatism, because your conservatism does not align with these people's conservatism.
Nope.
But what are you conserving?
Republican.
As a Black man?
Well,
yeah.
My grandfather was conservative, and guess who his enemy was? Other white conservatives. There were no white liberals down there who was doing all this type of stuff. No, the people didn't want you to have no type of business, no type of access to bank account. They wanted to serve up economic sanctions to make sure that you couldn't grow as a people. And they were largely successful at it.
Yeah. The study's results suggest that a large voting bloc left the more redistributive political party over largely non-economic issues, reducing political support for redistributive policies just when theory would predict that they should become more popular. As a result, the poorest parts of the country now serve as the base of the Republican Party, the party that is least supportive of redistribution. i.e., we don't want asylum seekers in our cities, i.e., we're against DEI, i.e., we're against affirmative action, i.e., let's get the banning of the books, i.e., let's get the banning of Black authors, i.e., let's support more police officers shooting Black men and choking them out in public, and not going to jail for it, right? Those are their views. And this article was written 7 years ago, based on what was going on 50 years prior to that. And today we still see the same thing going on right now. And you got people who would rather pretend that their conservatism is aligned with white men's conservatism. And they don't even provide any evidence to support it. With the exception of Clarence Thomas, I don't see how you can actually align, this is one of the reasons why we have a Black manosphere, okay? The white manosphere was very hostile towards Black men's issues back then. And it still is today. But I'm saying back then, it was very hostile towards Black men's issues and concerns with the system. Because they're racially conservative, like the piece is telling you. But you have people who are in the manosphere today that are trying to align themselves and saying, oh, we should have more Black men more white men in SYSBM and passport bros. It's like, well, where are you going with this? And where did you come from, right? I don't know where they come from. I mean, I got an idea where they come from, but I don't see how they're able to uphold their arguments on anybody else's panel, because they don't come here and have those discussions, right? They don't go to code breakers and have those discussions. They just come, to other people's panels and then get their ish off and then they leave. And I'm saying, if we can't even stand on the truth, right? If we can't stand on the facts and we can't stand on the history, how are we having any, progress at all? Like, where are you going with your ideas, and who are you going there with? Right? There's a lot of people in this space who are talking about, manosphere conferences and stuff like that. But what are you doing at those conferences? How are you a conservative, at a conference or be on StreamYards, but we don't see you actually aligning yourself with these other conservatives on the ground. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Also, you keep going to these black liberal cities with these conferences. You don't go to no conservative cities with your so-called conservative conference with all these conservative men. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see black men at the at Turning Point, at least not espousing their issues, because what are black men's issues that are so aligned with white men's issues? Remember, there was a content creator not too long ago, just the other day, talking about how Pearly Fangs was going to somehow, help advance the manosphere.
Yeah. Nick Fuentes, too. Nick Fuentes says how much he couldn't stand poor people. That didn't mean poor whites, too.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, man, you want space, don't you? That was the response. You want a space, don't you? So, you got to use every means that could be used. And I just never understood how that stuff literally worked. I just never understood.
Well, here's an interesting piece here, right? Importantly, the study's results do not imply that every white Southerner who left the Democratic Party embraced the Republican Party. In fact, the authors demonstrate that the Southerner increase in Republican identification, while still significant, is slightly less than half the decrease in the Democratic Party adherence over a sample period 1958 to 1980. Well, it wasn't until 1981 that Ronald Reagan took over and it became his party. And then that's where you see the explosion of white male conservatives. And then conservatives ran the yard for 3 administrations. They did it for Reagan.
Yes, they did.
They did it for Bush Sr. And then they ran it during the Clinton administration, if you really want to be technical about it, because Clinton was... Clinton was more to the right than he was to the left, if you want to be technical about it. And so they've had over a decade of running the yard. Okay. So link is in the chat. I'm only going to be up here for 5 more minutes if nobody shows up. Because this is an important discussion. A lot of misinformation in the manosphere. Oh, the Democratic Party is this and the Democratic Party is that. They never show you any evidence. Well, Joe Biden, he's this and he's that. Well, let's be really technical here. Joe Biden is to the right of Trump.
Way to the right.
Trump was never to the right of, Liz Cheney is to the right of Trump. Okay, Dick Cheney is to the right of Trump. I don't think people really understand that Trump is not really what you think he is. And so when you say conservative, what does that really mean? Because we know just by reading this piece here that white males' conservatism is radically different than black men's conservatism. It's radically different. There's no space for you as a black male conservative with white conservatives. It doesn't make any sense. What? Second Amendment? That's not going to be able to. You can't. Find common ground on the Second Amendment. It doesn't work that way, because we saw what happened with Philando Castile when none of the NRA or any of the gun advocates spoke out for him.
Didn't even bother.
So it can't be the Second Amendment. And it can't be about women, because you go to these, how come all these Muslim and Christian women, aren't messing with these same guys in the manosphere? I don't get that part. Nobody has ever explained that to me as to why are your hardline Christian women in the church or your hardline Muslim women in the mosque, how come they're not checking for these brothers? What about these Catholic women, right? This is all the sisters in the Catholic Church too.
Yeah, a lot of.
Yeah, let me drop the link in there just one more time. Be up there for 5 more minutes, see if he decides to come up.
Yeah, but here's the problem. Like when you get used to presenting narrative rather than proving points, that's how you get trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Presenting a narrative, you don't want no pushback. You just want to hide in your little cubby hole and do this type of stuff. I'm like, that's not how actual debates work. You just can't present falsehoods and like, oh, well, you know what, you just got to leave it there, Bob. Like, no. There has to be an analysis between what's true and what's not.
And it can't be about economics, right? Because
No, of course
if
not.
it was about economics, let me pull this up. What's going on, Renaissance man?
Hey, what's up, Mike? What's up, MOT?
What's wrong, man?
Yeah.
Chilling, man, chilling.
Yeah. No. To the point about conservatism, I think people get it. One of the things I always have to try to correct people on is that when they'll try to invoke black men are conservative, they're really trying to say black men are traditional, which really ties back to like Victorian era gender roles and thoughts and themes around masculinity. Because if you understand what conservatism is about, it's a form of basically preserving the system, the current social structure, or if there are changes, those changes happening very slowly. What's up?
Yeah, preservation of the status quo.
Yeah,
when white
exactly.
people had all of the power and black people had none of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do have some who I guess technically sided. I know there was a guy in Mississippi back in the 1800s who voted to preserve to vote against basically black people having rights because he was one of the wealthy landowners there. So, I mean, you do, I guess, have those instances of like an individual sort of siding with the white power structure, but you know that rarely happened because you know black men were always at the bottom of this system. So when guys start talking about invoking conservatism, you know, they'll go to like a Booker T. Washington or someone like that. Those men still were progressive in the sense of they may have had like a bootstrap politics, but they were using that bootstrap politics to empower themselves and thus change the system. They were not trying to embrace a bootstrap politic that would have just kept the system as is. Because even Washington acknowledged that, hey, if you don't agitate for rights, but basically, you know, become skilled and basically can do something productive in society, that the society will have to accommodate you. So even he believes in the gradual change of society towards equality. So this whole idea of conservatism, it doesn't make sense.
But Booker T had to do that because there were no other opportunities available for black folks.
Absolutely not.
I mean, he didn't do it because he was bored. Yeah, but he didn't do it because he was bored on a Sunday or something like that. No, he had to do it. It was out of necessity.
Yeah, pragmatism.
Yeah. Was he a moral pragmatist?
Hey, maybe so, but I mean, your point.
Let me read. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. No, you got it. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me read this piece here. The study's results suggest that a large voting bloc left the more redistributive political party over largely non-economic issues, reducing political support for redistributive policies just when theory would predict that they would become more popular. As a result, the poorest parts of the country now serve as the base of the Republican Party, the party that is least supportive of redistribution. So it can't be about economic alignment, right? You can't say that black conservatives and white conservatives are on the same page when it comes to economics. It's just not true. It's just not true. You can look at the military industrial complex. They are not all that welcoming. Go ahead.
No, go finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that you could look at the military industrial complex and you can see how unwelcoming they are to Black men. So where is this political alignment that Black conservatives say that they have with white conservatives? I'm not seeing it at all. Not in this piece and not in any part of history. I'm not seeing it. It can't be about serving in the military and using the military as a social class, right? Because the military is a social class within most countries, including the United States. But they were lynching Black men coming out of the military. How do you explain that?
No, it was explained because, basically that gave Black men status, specifically in the South, and that upset the social order. So that's why you see like things like the lynching of the blinding of Isaac Woodward, things along those lines, because it was creating tension. So even in that instance, there was a backlash against any sort of perceived gains, and these are people who fought in World War II. Or other conflicts.
Yeah.
So it's reared its hair there. And you even see in the 60s when Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act, he says he's going to lose the South for a generation, which he is right. It trended towards the Republican, and it's gone towards the Republican Party now. And that was exactly because of the embrace of those policies of Black people. So, I don't see how there's some alliance when, as soon as, essentially, that party the Democratic Party embraces anything that even symbolizes just basic stuff like guaranteeing the right to vote, like saying you can't discriminate against another American in housing, basic, very basic stuff, not even the wokeism that these people like to complain about or, affirmative action, any of those things, just basic rights. You have a complete defection from that party out of resentment for that. So it doesn't make sense on this idea of there's some alliance.
Let me read this last piece here. Though this outcome may seem counterintuitive to many observers of American politics, it should serve as a sobering reminder of just how powerful a political force racial ideologies can be. Before 1963, white voters in the South were, if anything, slightly to the left of white voters elsewhere on domestic policy issues. Further, while the 1960s also saw the political organization of women and other minority groups, the authors found no evidence that white Southerners who have negative views of women, Catholics, or Jews were likely to leave the Democratic Party in 1963. The exodus was specific to those who were racially conservative. To me, racial conservatism is the apex of conservatism in this country. There is no other way around it. You can't say, well, you can't say, oh, I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't want to send money to other countries, but you have no problem sending it to Israel. It doesn't make any sense. It's only when it's in regards to Black people, and more specifically, Black men. And that's what this affirmative action thing is about, anti-DEI policies and, UBI, anti-UBI, agendas and things like that are being pushed back against. It's those who have racial conservatism as their pinnacle source of conservatism. And I don't see how Black men could be racially conservative in a country that is largely hostile to their existence. If you're a truck driver, you turn on a CB radio, you're gonna hear a lot of white noise on there. Pun intended.
Yeah, all day. All day, all night.
Yeah.
You jumping on the panel defending it, man. It's crazy.
Not like you said, to your point of it's ironic, none of those things, like you said, women's rights, anything like that, that didn't cause a shift. It's once again embrace of civil rights. That's when you start to see this shift of really, Black people. Let's just be honest. That's when you start to see this shift out of the Democratic Party, in a way. And I mean, that's how it's always operated. So I mean, to sit up here and act like, that's not a thing. It's just, you just have to misread history. You have to either not know it, be misreading it purposefully, or just like outright ignoring facts.
Well, here's another thing, right? Charles Irby in the chat says, at AB Media, I have found black male mayors to be just as problematic. Exhibit A, Eric Adams, Brandon Johnson, and Baltimore mayor, who have shown to be a disappointment.
I mean, the thing I would say to
based
that,
on one issue.
well, the thing I would say to that is like, Brandon Johnson, if he's talking about Chicago, he hadn't even been in office like 3 or 4 months.
That's what I'm saying. It's like,
and then if you're talking about Eric Adams, I mean, Eric Adams is a very moderate mayoral candidate. I mean, you can ignore you if you want to look.
He's to the right of the party.
Yeah. I was gonna say, or
he's to the right. He's to the right of the party. Remember, Go ahead and finish, please.
Oh, okay. No. I was gonna say, if you look at someone like Dinkins, for example, he was a really good mayor of New York. He's the one who redesigned Times Square, even though Giuliani tries to take credit for it. He brought crime down, as well as I believe it's the tennis tournament up there in upstate New York. He was big on getting that there. He did great things. What's his name in Atlanta? Maynard Jackson. He's the one who brought the airport to Atlanta.
Yeah, Maynard Jackson.
Brought Delta Airlines, busiest airport in the world now. So I mean, I don't think you can just pick on 3 black mayors randomly. One of them that hasn't even been in office, 6 months, and then one of them that's a moderate. And then I think he talked about the mayor of Baltimore, which I will say I think the mayor. I don't think he's a great mayor, but I mean the political establishment in Baltimore has been bad in general. So it's not really saying much in my opinion. But carry on.
No, I mean, how do you explain Marion Barry? What about the mayor of Detroit in the I forget his name now. Why is his name slipping my brain right now? Anyways, what about those mayors, right? Like, there's so much evidence to counter what Charles Irby is saying to AB Media. I'm not saying that, Tom Bradley.
So
you can't just look at, Brandon Johnson, of Houston, who could be a future contender in the Democratic Party himself.
thing is, you can't have progress if everybody don't know what's going on. Everybody don't bring the same political history to the table. You're always going to keep having these issues.
The other thing too is like when you say disappointment. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, there haven't been a ton of. I mean, there are some cities like Atlanta's had a black. Even then, you had what? Right now, you got Andre Dickens in Atlanta. Before him, you had Keisha Lance Bottoms. You had Kasim Reed. Before that. And I believe it was I can't remember who was before Kasim Reed. But I mean, you have outside of cities like Atlanta, DC, Baltimore, there's only Detroit, there's only a handful of cities that really have black mayors. And when you honestly look at it from the standpoint of, these cities turn into places where, basically industry has left, and then after the fact you get a black mayor. You have to sort of look at that in the sense of how the sort of the political economy at that time of that mayor, what they're up against. I mean, we can't look at someone, like the mayor of Baltimore now, after Baltimore has gone through, had basically jobs leave in the 70s and 80s, and the city has just basically kind of gone downhill. You can't really look at that and really say, oh, I'm disappointed, and then not look at, say, a Washington D.C. or Atlanta that's growing. So you have to sort of look at things in the cycle too, because you can always go find a city just because of redlining policies and negative policies that have been directed towards Black people, and then go find a Black mayor and say, oh, well, he must not be doing a good job. It's like, wait, let's look at all the issues they were handed and all of the discriminatory policies that have been put into place, and take that into account.
Right. I mean, because it's the same, sort of criticism that they have for HBCUs, right? HBCUs, they don't really do much, they're not really producing anything. But in reality, you look at how a lot of the land granted HBCUs were basically stymied for all of their resources by the state itself. And then most of the HBCUs exist in the conservative South. But nobody has anything to say about, Governor Tate Reeves. No one has anything to say about DeSantis. No one has anything to say about Hot Wheels down in Texas. No one has anything to say about the mayor of Arkansas. I mean, the governor of Arkansas, Huckabee.
Huckabee Sanders.
No one's talking about that though.
Never.
Yeah.
That or won't talk about, sort of the unsuccessful places that, you got some of these places, or won't talk about the data, big picture, if you want to look at either mayors or governors, won't look at like a governor in like, a small town in West Virginia and say, oh, well, I'm disappointed with this, a white mayor in one of these towns, but then, oh man, let's go bring up Baltimore or something like that, like a city we've known has systemic problems. It's just people are picking and choosing, they're cherry picking.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just that let's look at Jackson, Mississippi. I mean, would you say that Mayor Lumumba is a bad mayor because he can't, have access to the resources that the state is pretty much stymieing, him from actually having, or the city of Jackson from having? Who's trying to take the airport from Jackson? It sure isn't Mayor Lumumba. It's coming from extremists in the governor's mansion. So, yeah, I don't get it. I don't get like the infatuation of white conservatism. I don't get it.
Or like if you look at like in Jackson, the whole water crisis, it's just like, okay, you see the crisis, like who's voting when there's an infrastructure bill that's going to basically take the lead pipes out of the ground and put new pipes in the ground in various cities across the country. Who's voting for that, in Mississippi, and then who's voting against it, at the federal level? Like, it's just,
and who's,
it doesn't make sense at all, because it's like,
and who's getting, no, and who's getting the contracts on that? Because we know right now that Black people are getting less than 2% of government contracts out of the $500 billion that's out there. So how can you say that, I wish somebody would come up here and try to defend this, man. I wish somebody would really try to come up here and defend it. Because you can't blame that on Black leadership or the quote unquote Black misleadership class, like how Buddy likes to say from California, Larry, what's his, the one who
Larry
ran
Elder.
for governor of California. Larry Elder. I mean, he couldn't even get on the Republican ticket. For all the conservative talk that he has, they won't even allow him on a ticket. Tim Scott, out of here. Like, what are we talking about here? Where's Michael Steele? Like, all these black conservatives, man, these dudes make me laugh, man. And I hate to bash them, but, you know, when I see videos like AB Media puts up, and I'm not bashing AB Media, I'm just using his video as an example because it's an avatar of the misinformation in the manosphere. A lot of people think that we're bashing the manosphere because we're correcting the record. That's crazy. Like, I don't even understand how you can come to that conclusion. But I think that we've given people enough time to come up, ample amount of time to come up, and I don't really see anybody coming up to come up here and defend the misinformation of the Democratic Party is the party of slavery and racism. I mean, if you really think about it, both parties benefited greatly from apartheid. I don't see why that's even. I mean, because that's really what you have to call it, right? It's a two-tiered system. At least it was a two-tiered system at the time when Black people didn't have the right to vote. Any other civil rights. That's an apartheid system. It was an apartheid state. And so to say that only one party is responsible for that, that doesn't make any sense. Everybody benefited greatly who was white, whether you voted or not. If you were white, you benefited greatly from the system of inequality. Gary Chambers ran for both Congress and Senate, and you didn't have folks come out and support him. So what's really the problem?
Yeah, and he was a good candidate.
We have a new guest.
He was in the deep South, and he was talking about everything from marijuana legalization to criminal justice reform, police brutality. I mean, all the progressive policies. Great candidate.
He had better ass than the DNC, I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. His ads were all the way. Yeah, his ads were all the way to the left. Is this CI? Do you have anything you want to add to the discussion before we close out?
Hey, can you guys hear me now?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's CL. I was born and raised in Detroit, and I just wanted to touch on this for one quick second. I think you were talking about Coleman Air,
go ahead.
And Kwame Kilpatrick, two black mayors over Detroit. And listen, because these black men, there was a lot of black millionaires and a lot of black thousandaires. My family owned one of the biggest black construction companies in the city of Detroit, Dumas Construction, Dumas Concepts and Construction. We were family friends with one of the other biggest black construction companies, Jenkins Construction. And those weren't the only two. Because when they were in office, black men had construction companies. They were getting bids for the city. They were building every a communist. He was selling drugs. He was doing all types of stuff. He had gold Krugerrands from South Africa, but none of that stuff was proven. He was never convicted of any of that stuff. But I do know he put black people in high places all throughout the city, even to this day. And the current mayor, who's a white man, this guy, his hands are just as dirty as Kilpatrick or Coleman A. Young ever was, except he's been chosen. He's the boy of the white establishment, so they let his crimes go. As far as Kilpatrick, there was a lot of character assassination on him. He was the hip hop mayor. He, had he had an affair. He had a stripper that he killed and all this other stuff. He was never convicted. If you look in research, he was convicted of a financial crime. That's true. He was convicted of a financial crime, and he was given a extremely disproportionate sentence. I think he got like 28 years for it. A white guy doing the same exact crime would have only got 5 years, 10 at max. So people need to do their researching. Black men, and that's just Detroit. You look at Atlanta, Washington, D.C., it's the same as that story. You can make fun of all these different mayors that you want and put them down, but they put black people in position, black men in positions of power, influence, and wealth. That's all I got to say.
Hey, thank you for coming up and contributing, man. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah, I was going to quickly say before we close out, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Now, I heard the same thing when I came to DC and I was talking to a cab driver. The same thing CL just talked about. I was talking to him about Marion Barry. He got the bad rap as well about smoking crack in the hotel. But and I was kind of messing with him about it. But he was like, hey, people. He was like, hey, people go and make fun of that. But he's like CL said, a lot of black people had jobs and were in positions of authority, and that's why people were rocking with him at the end of the day.
Yeah, just let me toss one more thing again. I guarantee you, if Kilpatrick was able to run again, he would have a very good chance of getting the mayor's seat again. The white establishment would have to launch a campaign to keep him out of office.
You bring up Detroit, and I think I think it's also relevant to say that Lieutenant Governor Gilchrist could potentially assume that position.
Facts.
Yeah, he's young, very ambitious, a tech guy. He's an IT guy, and he has a clean track record. And he sounds to be very hopeful as a candidate in the future. I definitely see him 2026, 2028 being a breakout candidate out of Michigan. It could turn the politics on top of its head.
True.
But I don't see many brothers in this space actually wanting to support Gilchrist. He's the real SYSBM if there's an SYSBM in office right now.
Anyways,
I really appreciate you coming up here and contributing.
I was going to put one last tip on it. I've really been influenced by you guys. I'm going to tell you straight up. I voted for Trump in 2016. I was on the
really?
I was watching PragerU videos. I was the whole 9 yards. And but then I've always been an open-minded person. So I listen to the other side, of course. And as more information came in that went beyond the talking points, because that's all it is on the conservative side, is very they're nice little talking points. But once you go beyond that talking point, there's no explanatory power behind what they're talking about that produces the solutions that they describe. Just be conservative, keep the Mexicans out, and put Trump back in. Somehow that's magically going to cause black men to gain more wealth. I don't know. I don't follow it. I don't follow the formula.
Neither do we. And we've been waiting all night for somebody to come up here and explain that position. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming up here, man, and the kind words, and thank you for your contributions.
No doubt.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button on the way out. Share the video if possible.